8. I'd now like to call up Senate Bill 56 for its first hearing. Here to provide sponsored testimony is Senator Huffman. When you're ready,
All right.
please proceed. Welcome.
Thank you. Chair Thomas, members of the House Judiciary, thank you for giving me the opportunity for sponsored testimony to Senate Bill 56, which seeks to streamline the administration of Ohio marijuana programs and address several public safety concerns. Many of the provisions in the bill may look familiar, as they are largely reflective of what the Senate passed in House Bill 86 last General Assembly. First, the bill merges Ohio's medical and adult use marijuana programs under the Division of Cannabis Control, which voters recently established with the passage of Issue 2. Consolidating both programs under the division will allow for consistent requirements regarding testing, packaging, labeling, advertising, especially those related to protect children. It also provides for streamlining license standards and general compliance procedures, cutting down on bureaucracy, red tape, and government waste. It is important to note the bill ensures those entities who were issued licenses under Issue 2 maintain their licenses, as many have already been granted and are operational. The bill also addresses several public safety concerns, such as banning public smoking, prohibiting driving while the driver or any passenger is using marijuana, ensuring homegrown marijuana is not grown at residences that operated in-home daycare program. Senate Bill 56 respects the voters' wanted home grow, but sets a more reasonable limitation of 6 plants per household. Further, the bill clarifies the ability of local law enforcement to investigate alleged violation and harmonize employer protection regarding drug-free workplace policies. Unlike the as introduced version of the bill, passed version would keep the excise tax on marijuana at 10%, just like the initiated statute. And to me, that is something to be discussed during the budget, but would be happy to have further discussion here. Senate Bill 56 also requires the same expungement language in 86. Ohioans who had previously been convicted of minor that is now legal under Issue 2, Senate Bill 56, the conviction expunged upon application. Included in that. In short, the bill is about government efficiency, consumer safety, and maintaining access to voter-approved adult use marijuana. this bill and looking at Representative Stewart's bill, I think it has this kind of the same thing. The theme on it is to be reasonable, protecting children, and to clean some things up in the medical, recreational, and try to harmonize things to make it a better system.
A lot of points. I appreciate the time you've spent to learning this and drafting and hundreds of hours that we spent together last session. There are two specific things I want to ask about. The first one is the distribution of funds.
I need to get right. Initially, it was all going to the General Revenue Fund, and the Senate was going to discuss it. The sub put it to past it. I do think at some point, and I know that there's should it be 36? One thing after I introduced it, it was going to the General Revenue Fund. Myself and locals that they agreed to have the dispensary. They feel there was going to be some negative. The money do other things. So it is further discussion. I don't have honor that, and for how much and how long is by this committee, and
Thank you. The second of my three question topics is the number of licenses to be issued and the different sizes. It looked to me in reading the way it came out of the Senate that this eliminates the voter approved level 3s and some of the new rights as well, and limits it to a number not greater than what's already been. And I think I have a couple of concerns there. And one of the big ones is for the consumer, the pricing. Obviously, supply and works in this as an industry to limit the supply by not issuing the voter extensions, dealing with some of our processors now that this will take away the potential for them to get a supply by having a small grow site, the level 3s or something similar. Do you have some concerns about that economically, that will continue to have folks drive up to Michigan or New York because of the price differential?
Chairman, to the representative, absolutely. Not in this bill, but I believe in several years, next General Assembly, the one after that, I think we should totally deregulate marijuana in the state of Ohio. That we should not have, if we're capitalists, we should let other people have more grow space with, if they can do it under the current regulations with the number of cameras, the number of security and all that stuff, which would drive down the price. So we're going to tackle that in this General Assembly, but I believe that once the return on equity to the large and the risk that the current others people in the process, because if you can better, then good for you. We should buy, or if you can have a better dispensary. We don't limit the number of grocery stores or the number of Krogers or like that. Certainly not the number of gas stations in the state of Ohio after 4 years. So would certainly look at that. But to your question, I know we eliminated the level, what would be new 3, which is a very small growth. And the thought process there was it would be very difficult for 1,000 square foot cultivator to compete against 10 or 12 that are growing at 100,000 square feet. Maybe they do have a niche market, some analogies to a craft brewer, but thought that would kind of be a revolving thing that would be difficult and to regulate.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The final question is an overarching. I really appreciate your answer about 2 or 3 years from now, a much more open market. I think that's what the voters were kind of thinking when they voted that legalization means legalization. Are you okay working, and I assume you are working with Representative Stewart and having the House bill or choosing one of the bills as a vehicle and working with the other chamber to get something that's mutually agreeable?
I would be very open to working with Representative Stewart. If this is the vehicle, his is the vehicle, I just believe the important thing is that we get something done by July 1st. And I think that looking at what he has and what I have, I don't believe that things are very far apart. I think that that can be done. If I may, Chairman, address another topic is the Senate decided to do this in 2 parts. Today we will vote out Senate Bill 86, my bill for hemp. Very similar topics, yet very complex and different. We chose to do 2 different bills. Representative Stewart has a bill where they're combined. I don't believe there's a right way or a wrong way to. If the House comes back and says we're going to put it all together, and here it is, I won't disagree with that. I just again, I also would tell you, in my opinion, hemp is the more important topic. Just because there's no regulation, bad things are happening to kids and so if they both come together in some way, I wouldn't disagree with that.
Great. All right. Representative Isaacson with a question.
Thank you, Chair. Senator, thank you so much for your testimony today. I just want to start trying to get a sense of sort of the bill, because it was initially introduced, or that a bill like right after the voters voted on issue 2. Can you just give a sense, as the sponsor of this bill, what do you think primarily voters were voting on? What they were voting on when they, voted overwhelmingly for issue 2? What were the core components that they went to the ballot for, in your view?
Exactly what it is, because I'm sure things that people voted for looked in there and said, well, I don't like these couple things, but I like it's my opinion. I thought I voted no for two, but we have this, and we have that. The voters of Ohio came out and said, with a fair number, yes, here it is. And this is to, I think, make it better. And I think in the long run, my personal opinion, the average recreational marijuana user in this bill, or Representative Stewart's bill, really doesn't do much to change. But I think there's a lot of positive in combining the two, the bureaucracy and the decreasing regulations to make which hopefully will decrease the price.
Follow up?
Thank you. Would it be fair to say that the voters were voting to legal recreational use of cannabis and marijuana?
Yes, sir?
Follow up?
Okay, so I agree. I think basic element, that's what voters certainly knew they were voting on. I have a few questions about the rationale or the thinking and some of these criminal changes and the penalty changes. Am I understanding your bill correctly? Someone were to pass a joint or a gummy or something to someone to use recreationally, that under this bill shift the law back to making that criminal?
I believe so.
Okay,
Follow up?
yes, please. And is it that if someone is a passenger in a non-moving vehicle and they eat a gummy, passenger of that non-moving vehicle, they would then be
Correct me, I'm not sure.
let's say they're smoking a joint.
Well, yes. That would be,
Follow up?
I guess what I'm trying to understand from voters, as you noted, clearly voted to legalize use of marijuana. Recriminalizing things like sitting in the side of a car and smoking a joint. How does that jive with respecting the legalize the recreational use when some of the most fundamental uses of cannabis? Just how kind of conflicting reality.
Chairman, I guess in the same sense that I think the try to be reasonable for everybody. And I understand that there's difference of being reasonable and safe.
For that work. On the issue of the tax rate, I think it's important to note that it's my understanding that the Department of Taxation has come out and said, look, there's kind of a flaw in issue 2 where there's no real authorizing language for any of this 36% of tax revenue to actually get to the locals. And so they're not receiving it today. That might be an argument. There's pros and cons to initiated statutes, but that might be one of them. And so is it your and the Senate's understanding that we do one of these bills that would increase, 20% is obviously more than zero.
Mm-hmm.
Current practice today is the municipalities, they're getting zero unless we do something in this bill. Is that your understanding as well?
Chairman of the representative, absolutely. And I'm not sure if that wasn't on purpose, that the writers of this give an avenue to distribute the funds. It's currently sitting, whatever, year of taxes are sitting in the Department of Taxation. There's no way to distribute those funds. And so this bill, or any bill, is going to have to do that to distribute the funds in the future and hopefully give some guidance to the Department of Tax on what percent and how much and when.
Thank you.
Follow up?
Thank you for that. And since I know we're going to talk hemp,
Mhm.
we've kind of got two bills kind of on the same topic. I will but I've gone back and talked to folks who were. I've looked at some of that debate, and what occurred is we had a process. Legislature said, "Hey, let's let hemp farm sell hemp products, make clothes, make rope, make whatever that you can do with this product." And then we kind of drove a tank through that loophole and said, "Well, we're going to sell, 420 drinks and Delta 8 and have 9 smoke shops in Circleville, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And now the argument seems to be, well, because we've driven the tank through that loophole so effectively, we couldn't possibly, go backwards and try that oversight. What is your I know you've tackled both, but in your view, the rationale for saying that a intoxicating product should have to go through it?
Chairman of the representative, well, I will take blame because the original hemp bill was my bill in 2018 with Senator Hill. We never talked about any of this CBD and hemp and everything. We talked about industrial hemp, clothing and that, and girls that people were using for that were made out of hemp. Really didn't think of it. And back in 2018, when we initially passed the hemp bill, I believe we should have put them in the dispensaries because it's intoxicating. It's confusing and very complicated is that often these things are sold and they are not intoxicating in the form that they're sold, but many of them are combust, and the heating process actually turns the gum to something else, and it does become intoxicating. And the other thing that gets along with hemp is the synthetic things that they make in a lab. That are intoxicating, the Delta 9s in things, and that is what we're trying to do. And so to finish answering your question, they're intoxicating. Intoxicating things that are made of THC in the Senate bill should, because that's THC in other places in the state.
Follow-up? Representative Mohammed with a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator, for this bill. I wanted to ask you regarding the expungement provision of this bill, and it's a question that I asked Representative Stewart for his testimony as well. The current language of this bill requires that the individual file a request for expungement, pay $50, and go to a hearing. Last year, Representative Isaacson and I and Rep. Seitz worked on a bill, a streamlined process where it would be the clerk of courts that initiates that process. We met with several different clerk of courts. We were getting positive feedback. And this goes to the question that Rep. Isaacson was asking as well regarding the will of the voters. Be open to an amendment where the only thing that would be changing essentially is who initiates the process. Instead of requiring an individual to locate the county where they have the conviction, it'd be the clerk of courts doing a search of their file to notify that individual. All the other provisions stay the same. They still have to get a hearing. Prosecutor gets notified, victims get notified. Everything else stays the same. It would just be that initiating process. Would that be something that you'd be open to?
Well, Chairman Representative, learned in my time in the General Assembly to always say, yes, I'm open to any suggestions. And that said, yes, the thought of President McCauley in the Senate is there needs to be something active that someone does to get their expungement. There's a concern. There's other convictions in other counties. Who's going to make? I think it's simple. If a person has one conviction for minor marijuana, but do they have other offenses? Do they have? how do we delineate those to the one person or the other person that's convicted 5 times, or they have a higher percent? But certainly would be open to see what we can do because, there's a lot of marijuana convictions that are preventing people from getting housing and jobs and things like that. And part of the bill is to break down those barriers now that it's legal.
Follow-up?
One follow-up, yeah. Thank you, thank you. So you are open to that, and I'll be drafting an amendment to that effect as well. And the goal is that, as you mentioned, Senator, you did mention that if there are other offenses that are aligned, there's going to be hearing, and that's going to be determined. So of course, the goal is really that notification process, because as you indicated, there are a lot of folks who do have a criminal conviction for marijuana who are unaware, and that's impacting their employment. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the legislation, and thank you in front of the committee today. So I have 2 major concerns. I brought this up to Representative Stewart when he introduced this bill. The first one is a transportation piece of marijuana in line 1840. It makes it unlawful to transport, marijuana that's in original packaging unopened. And I think that's kind of going to open the door for individuals to get criminal offenses for having marijuana in their possession, even though marijuana, unlike alcohol, when it's in open, is not readily consumable in its original plant form. So maybe we could add some language in there that, it can't be in a readily usable form such as edibles or any other format that could be easily used like pre-rolls or anything like that. I think the mere transportation of adult use cannabis shouldn't be prohibited. You shouldn't have to know. You should put it in the trunk or behind the back seat. I think that can be a point of easy criminalization. But one of my concerns with the way it's drafted is I don't see a penalty section for that. In 3796.62, where we list the prohibitions, I don't see a penalty section for it. In the other penalty section where it talks about being charged as a misdemeanor 1, it only points to 3796.062 and not 06 or 06 and not 062. So if I could get a little bit, maybe I'm missing it. Is there a penalty section for .062 in the bill?
I don't have it in front of me, but I'll assume that you're right. So maybe we'll go back and look at that.
Follow up?
Sure.
The other concern that I've always had, and that's because I practice in this area, is I like the changes to home grow. But the concern with allowing people to take home grow marijuana outside of the home is that any marijuana in the state of Ohio now can be classified essentially as home grow when it's in a person's possession. That's kind of legalizing the possession of street grown marijuana. And there's another statute we have in our state that says marijuana that's sprayed with fentanyl is not going to be treated like a fentanyl related compound. It's going to be treated as though it's marijuana. So there can be marijuana on our streets that is intentionally laced with fentanyl to give it a stronger effect on our kids, and there's no way to criminalize it in the way the bill is drafted. So would you consider what I've envisioned is that if you want to grow in your home, fine, you need to consume it in your home. If you want to take it outside of your home, you need to have a medical marijuana license in order to have home grown marijuana on your possession outside of your home. And that allow for people to be able to make that choice. Would you be open to a discussion on that so we can make sure that we criminalize actual black market marijuana in the state of Ohio instead of just kind of giving it permission under this bill?
Chairman, to the representative, that's an interesting, complex issue, and certainly would look into that. The people to be able to marijuana is a technical thing, and I go to my practice of medicine. Somebody comes in the emergency room, everybody tells me they have it's medical marijuana. I'm like, no, I can look on the Ohio automatic reporting system. It's not, and so to be able to transport it and move it around is an important subject not to let people. I'm not sure getting a license is the best way, but as you know, many of the recreational users in the state of Ohio is rather resistant to get any type of license or identify that they actually consume it, but would certainly look at any provision that you would have.
All right. Representative Senator, question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Senator, thank you for your your bill here, and obviously with, between the hemp and the cannabis industries, there are changes that need to be made in our state, certainly, as we move forward. So I appreciate your work in this area. In regard to the home grow, and your bill cuts the limit from 12 to 6, how do you reconcile that with, you had said earlier in your testimony, if you grow it better, good for you. And we don't limit the number of gas stations or drug stores, grocery stores. And that your hope would be that you do get to more deregulation in the future. So if that's your hope, why then at this point cut the home grow in half?
Chairman of the representative, a lot of things in this bill is also, and there's a lot of discussion about the tax, is to prevent the illicit market. And so, you know, what I've been told by experts or whatever, that one plant, if grown properly a year, will produce 600 joints a year. And so in the initially the ballot says, you know, 6 a person, 3,600 joints a year. That's 10 joints a day. As not being a consumer of marijuana, that just seems an extremely large amount that if you have 6 that would be put into the illicit market. So, you know, Representative Stewart's bill has 12, this has 6 per family. But if you look at the ballot initiative, 6 for one person in the house, 6 for the other, but law enforcement enforce the law till it's over 23. That bar just seems absurd. So either 6 or 12, somewhere in between, I think is reasonable amount, but it is to prevent the illicit market that people go out. The dispensary, it's safe, it doesn't have fentanyl in it, doesn't have pesticides, doesn't have mold. It makes it safe and cuts down on the illicit market.
Yes, thank you. Understood. Just regarding the revenue sharing and the taxation, you know, the cities that dispensaries did so knowing that they would expect 36% of the 10% in perpetuity, I believe. And they've obviously budgeted and forecasted future city budgets based on that expected income. So do you think, I mean, changing it, I would argue that once again, we as the state are being a bad partner to our local governments, our local communities, a trend that really goes back to 2011 when we cut the local government fund in half. So do you think cutting in the middle of the deal here, the deal's already, they're expecting this, their budgets have been forecasted based on the 36%. Say we're being a good partner to our local communities by changing this in the middle of the game here? Thank you.
Chairman, to the representative, going back to a previous question, what did the voters know? If they didn't, they should have known they were voting to put in a revised code. Knowing that in the local jurisdiction should have known it was being voted, and they had to the point that we could put it at 0 at any moment. That's local jurisdiction. So I have no problem with changing it. What percent and how long is up to debate, but I don't think there's a problem with it because it's in the revised code. Everybody knew that when they voted, or they should have, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Okay.
Understood. Thank you.
Representative Odioso with the question.
Thank you, Senator Huffman. Thank you, Chair. I'm most concerned at this moment about what the Senate does to the chain of distribution. And let me be precise. How does this bill change the distribution from cultivator to processor to dispensary for the smaller cultivators, for the eliminating tier 3? I saw that. Is there, as it exists now, since the law has been passed by the voters, to after this bill, what is going to be the changes from this of cultivator, processor, and dispensary?
I'm not really understanding the question you're trying
I'll
the
try
question you're
again.
trying to get to.
Well, I'm going to get at, in particular, the smaller cultivators. Will the smaller cultivators' ability to cultivate and process and get product to the dispensaries be changed by this bill? And what is your understanding of the current chain?
Chairman of the representative, I would have to dig deep into it. I don't really think much. There can be an integrated system where the cultivator may own a dispensary, some own a processor up and down the line. Some of them just two. So they should still be able to, but I've also heard that processors are often is finding difficult to find product to actually process because of the integration going up and down. So I don't think it changes anything that was already set up, but I'd have to look in more detail. Thank you. Yes.
Representative Williams with the question.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick follow-up. It was brought to my attention. Would you be open to also prohibiting the combustion of hemp in public? Otherwise, without officers being able to have a distinguishing characteristic between hemp and marijuana, they're very similar in odor. Officers would lose reasonable articulable suspicion to investigate. Would you consider adding
a marijuana plant looks very similar to a hemp plant, and it almost takes an expert to distinguish the two. And you're right, the smell and other products, including the cannabinoids and the cannabidiols are very similar, and the smell is
Thank you for being here.
well, thank you.
This concludes the first Senate Bill 160 for its second hearing. Here to provide proponent testimony, first is Rick Carfagna on behalf of the Ohio Commerce. Welcome, and when you're ready, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, members of the House Judiciary Committee. Opportunity. I'm Rick Carfagna, Senior Vice President of Government Affairs for the Ohio Chamber. We are the state's leading business advocate. We represent over 8,000 companies that do business in Ohio, and our mission is to aggressively champion free enterprise, economic competitiveness, and growth for the benefit of all Ohioans. With the passage of 2, the OCC understands that this is new ground for everyone with a statute that is complex and full of nuance. Because issue 2 passed through an initiated statute, the General Assembly now has the discretion to make any necessary statute marketplace. Of all the provisions that are targeted for revision within House Bill 160, we remain focused on 2 main areas of the broadest and highest priority for the statewide business community. Those are employer workplace protections and ensuring private property rights. Provisions that are found here in House Bill 160 also mirror those found in Bill 6, as you just heard from Senator Huffman, that the Ohio Chamber likewise supports. Place protections. We appreciate sponsor Representative Stewart's inclusion of 2 key chamber requests, which is employer protection laws to account for recreational marijuana usage. First, House Bill 160 addresses a provision that is already in Ohio employer protection law, but not included in issue. This provision, ORC 3796.28C, adopted in the budget during the 134th General, specifies that employers do not violate any anti-discrimination laws policies. Accordingly, the simple deletions of medical now expand vision to apply to all forms of marijuana, regardless of whether it is medical. Employment benefits if the use was in violation of the employer's drug-free or zero tolerance policies. The Chamber is grateful for these critical changes and for other efforts to strengthen Ohio's employer protection laws, to reinforce employers' abilities to maintain drug-free workplaces, zero tolerance policies, and the flexibility to conduct employee testing. Next, with regards to ensuring private property rights, the Chamber believes that the issue 2 statute is ambiguous as to what extent private property owners will be able to prohibit people from using, possessing, displaying, or transferring marijuana on their properties apart from existing bans on smoking. The Chamber firmly believes that publicly accessible places such as shopping malls, restaurants and bars, amusement parks, and other large areas under private ownership should be able to limit cannabis use, possession, and transfer beyond the state's existing smoking ban. To address this ambiguity, we believe the best way to achieve this outcome is to outlaw public use, and House Bill 160 largely achieves this by limiting the smoking, combustion, vaporization residents. In line with the Chamber's request to empower rental property owners to ban the use of marijuana products on their properties. So in closing, we understand that creating this new industry that was formerly illegal involves layers of complexity and consequences. It is equally important that we honor the vote of the people and administer this new program in the most socially responsible manner. And we think that the state can do both. We applaud the work and the initiative that has been shown by both Representative Stewart and Senator Huffman to revise the issue 2 statute. The Ohio Chamber of Commerce supports the efforts under both House Bill 160 and Senate Bill 56 to ensure the safe and responsible usage of recreational marijuana. We encourage your affirmative vote on both pieces of legislation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Ranking Member Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair, and Mr. Carfagna, thank you for being here and for your testimony. I have some questions around the workplace protections that you described. I agree that we've got work to do to sort of clear this up and make sure that everyone's on the same page. But in the interest of growing the workforce, which I know is hugely important to the Chamber and certainly important to the legislature, how do you think about a situation where if there's randomized testing at an employer, or if the being caught with marijuana can count as just cause for firing. If someone uses marijuana on the 1st of the month and they're at work 3 weeks later on the 21st, and they get a random test, they're not impaired. It was 3 weeks ago, but the test shows that they have marijuana, THC in their system, and that's cause for removal from the workplace. Are you worried both that will hinder workforce because people won't want those jobs in an environment where what they're doing is perfectly legal? So it'll make it harder to hire and harder to retain. Like, how do you square the need for workforce with the fact that the behavior they engaged in on the weekend of the month, without just cause to be fired? Like, how is that pro workforce development?
Sure. Chair Thomas, Ranking Member Isaacson, couple responding to that already. They understand they need all hands on deck. They have been relaxing a lot of their workplace policies. Many are not even testing anymore. So I think that employers realize we need the workforce. If it's something that we can either look the other way, or we don't think that a positive test is going to impair our operations or put us at liability. Next, I would argue that these provisions that we're talking about apply only when an employer has actually taken the initiative to create a zero policy, a drug-free workplace, where they have to actually go in and create a policy, communicate that to as it is understood between the employer and the employee that this is the expectation. It's not something where if this be signed into law tomorrow, somebody comes in and there's an accident and they test positive. Well, if you didn't have something in the books talking about these expectations, then it doesn't apply. You can't avail yourself of these protections. So that is something I think that the employer needs to think through if they want to institute that kind of a policy going to have the kind of outcome that's going to result in somebody being terminated. And then finally, I would say too that, and I would agree that, the testing is not on with that of alcohol. I can go out on my lunch break and have 3 Manhattans and come back to work, and the employer thinks that I'm impaired. And if I get a breathalyzer test, they can measure my blood alcohol level. To your point, you can't do that with marijuana. So if somebody goes out and consumes an edible on their lunch break or smokes a joint on their lunch break, they come back to work and they're impaired and I test them, they're going to come back positive. However, were they positive because they just now consumed it, or are they positive because they consumed it? Finding ways to improve technology, accurate tests, but until that day comes, anybody that's going to test positive on the job site is going to claim that they took something weeks ago because they have no other way to prove that. So we would prefer, especially with a lot of these jobs that are going to be coming that are in advanced manufacturing, a lot of precision type work, a lot of work that's going to involve heavy machinery. We want to err on the side of employers being able to police these things and to make sure that we are ensuring, safety on the work sites and that people are not impaired.
Thank you for that. I get the thinking, certainly. My main sort of follow-up, I think there's a lot of room to sort of create laws and regulations around, someone assuming if there's an accident and they're found to have THC in their system, then maybe then they assume the risk is the employee, but only in the case of an accident would you test. I think there's something there, because the real concern here is that they're ineligible for unemployment benefits. So how do you protect against someone who, again, took an edible legally in their home on the weekend, and then 3 weeks later, their employer wants to fire them for whatever reason, knows that they engage in, or takes a bet because of the huge amount of people who engage in this legal activity.
Sure.
does a random drug test, finds that they have THC in their system, that person now doesn't deserve unemployment benefits? Right? So against that kind of abuse. Benefits would be in the category of things we want to just make sure that people of them. Why would getting high in your 3 weeks prior employment benefits?
Sure, Tom. Again, if there's a way to create some sort of a separation to account for those instances, I think we'd be willing to work through that. Once again, until the testing improves, I have no way of knowing whether that consumed it 3 weeks ago or consumed it 3 minutes ago. I mean, a simple test is going to show that you're either positive or you're not. And, once again, if an employer is looking to cull his workforce of certain individuals, they do that. I mean, once again, I think that we have an economy right now where you can ill afford to leave talent on, push talent away or create a workforce or create a workplace where people are either disincentivized to continue working there or they don't want to come work for you in the first place.
Representative Williams with the question.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to testify today.
Representative.
So when I worked for the railroad as a subcontractor and I drove vehicles for a living, I had a back injury and that put me on prescriptions. But my employer said, you can't have opiates in your system while you're at work. That's a legal prescription. And that if I would have had in my system at the time, and whether I got hurt or drug tested, I would have, and was found to be positive and fired, I would be ineligible for for unemployment. So do you think that recreational users of marijuana should get higher levels of protection for unemployment than people that are injured on the job and may be taking a Percocet or a Vicodin as prescribed by their doctors? I mean, those opiates do cause a safety concern for employers that individuals have those in their systems and they don't get protection. Do you think we should give extra protection to individuals because they want to use a substance that's legal to consume, but their employer has clearly indicated they can't have it in their system while they're at work?
Chair Thomas, Representative Williams, we do not. And once again, we're not asking to break new ground with these asks. These are already provisions that are in current law and have been in law now applicable to medical marijuana, as you have indicated. Simply asking that we treat medical marijuana and recreational marijuana in the same manner. And also with alcohol, as was advertised by issue 2. And again, I will just reiterate that this is if you are in violation. These rights you can only avail yourself of as an employer if that employee is running afoul of a stated workplace policy related to drug-free or zero tolerance policies. That was something that obviously was communicated to you, that you made a conscious decision regarding the medication that you to not take because you did not want to run afoul of that workplace policy. So there should not be any surprises here if something is communicated between management and staff.
Representative Sonnenberg with question.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and Mr. Cavagna, thanks for being here today.
Good morning.
I know it seems like you wanted to outlaw public use totally. That's what you, and I think we've all become accustomed to being in public places where you can smell the smell of over years. It's one thing if you're going to a rock concert, we all sort of grew up, smell it, but it's another when you're walking into, let's say, a mall, which I have one in my district. Every time I walk into that mall, it smells. So a middle ground instead of limiting it to residences, or in the case of an edible, different. They obviously don't smell. Is that something that you'd be in public use of?
Chair Thomas, Representative Sonnenberg, I would argue that I think this, and for a couple of reasons. I mean, first, this doesn't apply unless I'm reading it wrong. I don't think this language applies to edibles. This is smoking, combustion, and vaporization of recreational marijuana. I don't believe it applies to edibles. I would argue right now, if I want to go to Polaris Mall, which is 5 minutes from my house, and go shop and consume an edible product or have a gummy while I'm walking around, I can do it. What I can't do is I cannot walk around with my mug of coffee that has ground oil in it and enjoy that at the same time. So we are not eating cannabis to the same degree as we are alcohol, as was advertised. So this, I believe, is a real start. Outlawing, again, smoking, combustion, vaporization of products. Doesn't touch edibles. We would like to see it go further. I'm content with what has been produced both in the Senate. It has been voted out of the Senate in the General Assembly by a bipartisan vote. We agree with what has been proposed here under House Bill 160, excuse me.
Thank you.
Mohammed with a question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Cavagna, for that. Just to follow up on Rep. Sonnenberg's question, my question goes along with what Rep. Sonnenberg was saying, and this is again, rental properties, a loophole that certainly, that I'm concerned about, and I think a lot of Ohioans are concerned about as well. Shopping malls, restaurants, those are public spaces that are used together. It's understandable that certainly you don't want to be at a restaurant, someone sitting next to you smoking marijuana. I can understand that perspective. But when you add rental properties being excluded from a personal home, that certainly leaves a big for any landlord to add into their lease that you can't use marijuana. Does that not negate sort of the intent of the voters for issue 2?
Chair Thomas, Representative Mohammed, and we want to empower private property owners, including land, to be able to. Now, again, that's something that would have to be incorporated into the lease, into the agreement. So that is a contractual relationship that I think the tenant would know when they are renewing, when they are moving into a new place, that is a condition there. It is a private property, and if he says, I don't want, consumed, smoked, vaporized on my property, we think that respect that.
One follow-up. Yeah, and I understand that perspective. And is when there's no exception for rental issue is often this is also a financial issue because a lot of the folks that or don't have the finances to own their own home are renting. And again, I asked the question again. I mean, I understand the argument,
Yes.
but it is a big loophole. When Ohioans were voting, that's not what they voted for. So the concern is this leads to a situation where many millions of Ohioans may not be able to have access, smoke in their own home. Again, this is their rental. So, I mean, would that be something that likely we are?
Chair Thomas, Representative Mohammed, I mean, look, we're always argued that they are not smoking in their own home, they're smoking in somebody's home. If there is a way that they put outside on a patio or consume it somewhere that foul of whatever is in the stated lease, then we don't ascribe any problems. We're always willing to talk.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for testimony. Next for proponent testimony is David. Proceed when you're.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chair Thomas, Vice Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, the esteemed members of the House Judiciary Committee. My name is David Mahan. I'm the Policy Director for the Center for Christian Virtue, Ohio's largest Christian public policy organization. Today, I'm testifying in support of HB 160, which places much needed regulation specifically on extremely dangerous intoxicating hemp-derived THC products. It's been said that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. This statement is often used when we are counseling someone about the need to change bad habits or warning them about jumping into another terrible relationship. The decision surrounding the subject of this legislation has much to do with both. Ohio has been flirting with the addiction for profit marijuana industry for nearly a decade. And in 2024, we finally tied the knot. Unfortunately, we have failed to learn from the mistakes of other states as it relates to commercializing illegal narcotics. So now we must begin the process of learning the hard way. Whether the catchword is marijuana, cannabis, hemp, intoxicating hemp, what we are dealing with are products that contain some degree of THC or CBD, both of which can be dangerous to children. The relationship becomes even more dysfunctional when the industry has to cover up the dangers of their products simply by going with the law, a little chemistry, and semantics. Hemp is a non-intoxicating variant of the cannabis plant and is legally defined as being below 0.3% THC. Chemically modifying hemp can produce marijuana high in produce intoxicating restrictions that the net smoking in the 60s was only 3 to 5% THC, some 2% THC. And even that was enough to cause intoxication in some users. Today, genetically altered plants can be as high as 35% THC. Edible concentrates can be upwards of 95% THC. Law right now says they can be 90% THC in the state of Ohio. While these types of games and loopholes can no doubt be very lucrative to the white-collar dope dealers, they have unfortunately proven harmful and even fatal for children. According to America's Poison Centers, the rate of Delta-8 THC exposures reported to poison centers across the country increased by 82% just from 2021 to 2022. The fact is that most of us are used to thinking about when it comes to marijuana no longer exists today. However, every time states start thinking about breaking up this codependent relationship with big marijuana, or at least getting counseling, the industry keeps trying to keep us giggling and stuck in the good old days before teen cannabis use disorders and THC-related ER visits were at a serious issue as they are today across the country. The conversation has to change. And if we are still thinking of marijuana as simply a gateway drug, our thinking must change in order to prevent many of the devastating impacts that the marijuana industry has had across the nation. For example, in Colorado, who commercialized the drug in 2012, the #1 substance found in completed teen suicides is THC. Twice that is alcohol. But it took them a decade of kids killing themselves before they knew enough to do anything about it. However, after years of watching this industry and these drugs decimate state after state, Ohio no longer has the luxury of claiming ignorance. That said, while we support the efforts made in HB 160 to regulate a widely overlooked sector of the addiction for profit marijuana industry, CCV would like to suggest 2 common sense amendments. Based upon the lessons Colorado learned the hard way. 1, detailed research and reporting legislation monitoring the impacts of high potency THC related products, such as Colorado's HB 21-1317. And secondly, capping THC limits to at least that of the plants in Ohio, which is 35%. Even the Netherlands caps THC potency at 15%. As Ohioans are already struggling with epidemic rates of addiction, historically high crime, and a mental health crisis, how does one come to the conclusion that big marijuana could actually be trusted to regulate themselves? Again, I would like to thank the on this issue. I would also let you all learn more about the intoxicating hemp piece of this by listening to a podcast, the Narrative Podcast, recorded by Dr. Ken Finn, who advises state legislatures and the United Nations on this subject. Thank you for your time and welcome.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Looks like you're getting off easy.
Oh, thank
All
you.
right, hope you have, thank you. There are 2 written-only testimonies on your iPad for your consideration as well. This concludes the second hearing for House Bill 160. Now I'd like to call up House Bill 198 for its second hearing. First up to provide sponsored testimony is Laura Miller on behalf of the Ohio Council of Retail Merchants. Welcome to committee. Please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know Vice Chairman is not here, but Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the committee, thanks for this opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 198, legislation to provide for a regulatory scheme for the sale of hemp-based. And I testify on behalf of the members of the Ohio Council. We appreciate the efforts of Representatives Fisher and Ty Matthews to create a pathway forward for the safe and legal sale of hemp-based products in our members' stores. Some of our member companies have responsibly sold a range of legal non-consumable hemp products such as lotions, creams, soaps, and hair products for 6 years. We are currently unaware of any members selling consumables with a high concentration of THC marketed in packaging to entice children to purchase them, and we do not support the sale and marketing of such products. Our members are very hesitant to enter the consumables market without a specific regulatory framework in place. Therefore, we strongly support the regulatory framework created by House Bill 198 that would permit them to sell adult-only consumable products that contain an accepted level of THC sometime in the future as the market for such products develops. Our members' POS systems already verify age before purchase, employees are trained to prevent underage sales, and they display signage that indicates age verification is required. Thus, they are well positioned to comply with any Ohio regulations on approved adult use products as permitted by House Bill 198. Many consumers have shared their preference for consuming hemp-derived products containing low amounts of THC, such as gummies and beverages, over alcohol. These hemp-derived products provide for relaxation, better quality sleep, and no hangover effects the next day. As consumers' preferences change, opportunity to provide them with legal options. We hope the committee will agree that the free market regulatory approach provided for in House Bill 198 is better for Ohio businesses than relegating these non-intoxicating hemp-based products to marijuana dispensaries. Please remember that Ohio is closing sales products online. This practice will continue until make these purchases and how. Thank you for this opportunity. 198. I'm happy to attempt to answer any questions you may have. And just because I'm at first to something I'm an expert.
Great. Any questions for the witness?
fair to say that what you're asking for is for hemp regulated products or hemp products to be akin to beer and cannabis, THC, marijuana, traditional sort of weed related products regulated akin to liquor? So you can buy beer at a gas station, you know what it is, it's regulated, you have the ingredient list, it says it's clearly beer, you have to be 21, you have to show ID. Whereas a liquor store, you have to go to a specific store. Often you can't enter without an ID. So is that roughly analogous to what you're asking?
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Isaacson, that's a great comparison. That's a good analogy for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm reading your testimony carefully. You don't know of any members who are selling consumables with high concentration of THC. I assume, though, you are aware there are absolute retailers all selling high concentration THC products.
Mr. Chairman,
You would be aware of that as well. I mean, whether they're association or not, they're popping up all over the place. And comparing liquor to beer, you can walk in and buy a 50 milligram grams THC is just buying Bud Light.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stewart, we're not saying that 50 milligrams in a drink is appropriate. Would have to be determined via. We don't want to expect people to come in and purchase types of products in order to get. They're generally wanting them for relaxation purposes. That people who are looking are going to go to these stores that are selling these products in the area. So yes, you could drink a 6-pack of the hemp-based products and get a high possibly, but you can on a 6-pack of beer too.
Follow up?
When you have 50 milligram THC drinks and these smoke shops proliferating across the state, I mean, new ones every day, lying out the store, do you really not think folks are buying those products trying to get high?
Yes, they are. That's why we believe a regulated acceptable levels of THC in hemp-derived products regulatory setting, and put these folks that are
Questions? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Witness is Todd Bowen from the Ohio Restaurant. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, thank you. Members of the House Judiciary Committee, we have 25,821, 564,000 restaurants. The Ohio proponent testimony on House Bill 198. And I'm here today specifically to talk about hemp beverages. There will be others talking about, perhaps others, but our concern specifically is to hemp beverages. As representatives of Ohio's hospitality industry, we are here today in support of those Ohio brewers who took it upon themselves to responsibly test a new market and experiment with hemp-infused beverages. Alongside Ohio's brewers and in support of those bars who might also be interested in this potential market, we testified last General Assembly and earlier this General Assembly in support of treating hemp beverage sales similar to beer, including, of course, being only sold in 21+ environments. Our thanks to the sponsors for keeping this unique product in mind. This bill does accomplish the goal of ensuring that bars, restaurants, and brewers' ability to serve and sell these responsible beverages remain maintained. And in my written testimony, you've got a couple of examples of things that we want to make sure are maintained in this bill. But I just wanted to today kind of cite a quick example of why this is so important to Ohio's brewers, bars, restaurants. This weekend, my wife and I were in Cincinnati. We were visiting my son and his West Brewery, great spot in Cincinnati. And we're enjoying lunch, and I enjoy beer, so I got to be a little bit more conscious of her alcohol consumption, but still wanted to enjoy an adult beverage. So we were able to get a 5 milligram THC, a hemp-infused beverage that she enjoyed with our lunch. And on the can, it's very clearly marked 21+. It was sold in that environment. It was done very responsibly. Even with regulation in place, the labels were very appropriate. And what we're really just asking is to take this, actually write regulations that will take bad actors out of the equation, but those businesses that are doing this responsibly, let's find a way. We know how much these craft brewers and Ohio's bars and restaurants, the General Assembly understands how much they add to a community's vitality. Let's support them in this market, give them that opportunity. I'm glad to take any questions.
Great. Thank you for your time and your testimony. Representative Stewart with question.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your testimony. The alcohol industry is maybe the least free market economy that we have anywhere, right? I mean, everything is regulated from top to bottom. What's in it, how it's sold, it's marketed, who can buy it, where you can buy it. It's not a free market. Can we agree that this, THC infused product that you're talking about, this has just come up through a loophole? There's never been a vote, debate, discussion, no authorizing legislation of any kind to say that we're going to start allowing THC infused beverages in the state of Ohio. It's just taking advantage of a hemp product loophole we created 7 years ago.
Through the chair to Representative Stewart, that is absolutely why we are here to ask for responsible regulation. It should be responsibly regulated, and we are part of that.
Follow-up?
I'm just making sure I heard yes was the first answer, right? I mean, this is just a loophole exists. Folks have found a way to take advantage of it. You want to preserve that loophole, but we've never taken a vote here to say we're going to have marijuana beverages in Ohio, correct?
We are here today asking for responsible regulation of hemp-infused beverages. Very similar to beer would be the the closest resemblance. Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. That would be Representative Swearingen with the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony, Mr. Bowen, on this, a very important issue. I want to be very clear and careful of how I ask the question. So in your opinion, you went to Cincinnati and enjoyed this restaurant and beverages. Do you think in Ohio people responsible for producing those products or dispensing those products are the marijuana manufacturers and dispensaries, or do you think there are others in the state of Ohio that are fully capable of hosting, a forum where you can enjoy those beverages or produce those beverages?
Thank you, Representative, through the chair to Representative Swearingen. The alcohol bars, breweries, distributors, manufacturers of alcohol are operating in a regulated environment and are very capable of offering a similar but different product in a very regulated environment. Absolutely.
Do you think if products to one manufacturer industry that we risk losing further economic gains in Ohio?
Through the chair, the representative, absolutely. Beers are softening a little bit in Ohio, and there's a lot of competition, and certainly one could argue probably marijuana is competition, but those on-premise locations that we understand how much they bring to our community's vitality, offering them this opportunity, they can absolutely do it responsibly and take already existing, but potentially also away from them when it can be safely regulated. Very possible.
Questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Thank you for
Thank you.
testifying. Our next witness is Hannah Cubbins from Americans for Prosperity. Good timing. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, my printer at home has a unique ability to sense fear and urgency, and so it was not allowing me to print my testimony this morning, so sorry about the barrier here with the computer. Good morning, Thomas, Vice Chair Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the House Judiciary Committee. Thank you for the opportunity today to support House Bill 198. My name is Hannah Cubbins, and I serve as Legislative Director for Americans for Prosperity, Ohio. AFP believes in the power of the free markets, but free markets can only thrive when they are transparent and predictable. Several regulatory proposals on this subject. We support House Bill 198 because we believe the bill promotes our belief in markets while also maintaining consumer safety. Key features of the framework include requiring manufacturers, distributors, and retailers of ingestible or inhalable hemp products to be licensed, ensures product safety through mandatory independent testing for contaminants, requires accurate product labeling and age restrictions, being sales limited to those who are plus, prohibits vertical integration between manufacturers, distributors, and retailers, empowers the Department of Agriculture to oversee and enforce rules, and protects employers' rights to regulate employee use like existing marijuana laws. And it's our opinion that these requirements in the bill address a lot of the common concerns we hear from folks about hemp products. We believe the bill promotes a stable, predictable market by implementing a statewide framework that will create businesses, investors, and consumers. The statewide approach will reduce local patchwork regulations, allowing businesses to scale more efficiency and reduce compliance costs. Mandatory testing and labeling ensure customers can make informed purchasing and picking winners and losers. The requirement is in the bill encourages competition based on quality, safety, and transparency. House Bill 198 respects private enterprise, regulating only where necessary for safety, transparency, and youth access. No price controls, product bans, or heavy-handed restrictions are within the bill that would stifle innovation. And further, franchise and ownership rules prevent monopolistic vertical and preventing small business from entering. And while AFP normally would not advocate for regulations or licenses, we do recognize that in this space it's necessary, and we believe the framework in the bill is flexible enough. House Bill 198 is smart regulation. It's narrow, targeted, and focused on true public goods like safety and free markets. It levels the playing field, invites innovation, and gives entrepreneurs from local farmers to startups the opportunity to compete and grow. Smart limited regulation like this is what fosters true market freedom. I urge support for House Bill 198. I'm happy to take questions, but will say that I'm not an expert on the science of the different products out there, so speak to the regulatory space, but thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for the witness? Representative Calendar with a question.
We've been here a long time, and so I more of a comment than a question. You said your printer had what kind of an issue? It was, you said pressure and tension?
It has a unique ability to sense fear and urgency, and then does not work when I need it to. So
I would suggest the products discussed the last two bills might be of use.
Right. Thank you. I don't know if I should respond to that, but.
All right. Seeing no further questions, Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Mo Dayam from the Ohio Healthy Alternatives Association. Welcome, and when you're ready, please.
Chairman Thomas, Ranking Member Matthews, Ranking Member Isaacson, and all members of the House Judiciary Committee, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mo Dayam, and I am an Ohio resident and business owner here to voice my support for House Bill 198. Federal probation and pretrial services, and also the United States Marshal Service. Afterwards, I took a job with the state of Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. There, I received extensive training on many topics, including drugs and their impact on individuals. I worked for the state for approximately 3 years. I worked nearly 80-hour weeks throughout, saving as much as I can to invest in a business that I always dreamt of having. And once I had enough money, and with the help of a loan, I was able to open my first smoke shop location. I took an abandoned building in Ohio's 7th largest city, located on one of Ohio's busiest intersections, and invested nearly $500,000 into it, making it one of the nicest looking buildings in town. Today, I own 6 smoke shops, a wholesale company, and several commercial and residential real estate properties. I have also given employment opportunities to over 500 individuals over the years and paid millions in taxes. As a responsible business owner, I have prioritized giving back to my community. My company has donated almost 500 gun safety locks, including donating 250 one year to a state lawmaker to pass out at a county fair. We donate annually to local peanut butter drives, scholarships for students, you name it, we contribute. We try to help in any way we can. We also allow local charities to advertise on our properties for free. We understand that Ohio lawmakers see the hemp industry as currently unregulated, and I understand why the topic is being debated. I assure you that the industry is in support of reasonable regulations like those contained in House Bill 198. We want the responsible businesses to continue to operate and ensure there are not bad actors and unsafe products in the market. Provisions in the bill that we support include prohibiting sales to those under the age of 21. The industry agrees that hemp products are for adult use. For my business, a customer must be 21 to even enter my stores. I train my employees to check IDs using the widely recognized We Card program. I ensure my employees understand these best practices. Ensuring age restrictions are instituted statewide is something this body should enact. If a retailer also would ensure products on the market are tested to ensure confidence of what is in the product. Testing should be performed by an accredited laboratories. The industry also supports labeling requirements and restrictions. Some products that have garnered media attention are packaged like known children's candy brands. This should be prohibited, and the industry agrees they should be off the market. The hemp industry was legalized in 2009, in part at the urging of Ohio farmers who wanted to engage in the business. A ban that have been made in the cultivation and research of hemp. In order for the growing of hemp to benefit farmers, they need a market in which to sell their harvests. I hope this committee will recognize the hemp industry supports regulations to ensure consumer safety and confidence. We want responsible businesses to thrive and keep a strong open market. I hope this committee will support this approach. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you for your time today. Questions for the witness? Representative Swearinger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. One of the concerns that I've heard is sourcing the product, in some of these different smaller convenience stores and shops. Are you confident you can source where your product is coming from?
Chair Thomas, to Representative, thank you for that question. What I can tell you as a responsible business owner and wholesaler we take precautionary steps to ensure that the products that we are receiving and then also selling to retail come from a USDA hemp farm. We review the lab testing results to ensure that there's no contaminants, that THC levels are in compliance with state and federal laws before we actually bring in those products and introduce them to the market. So there are steps and safeguards in place to ensure that we're abiding by all those laws and ensuring consumer safety.
Follow up?
Do you think this regulatory framework will help make the industry more safe?
Absolutely. I believe House Bill 198 specifically outlines needed regulation. It'll give us more of an idea of things that we have to follow and how to go about abiding by the law. And, some structure we definitely would welcome.
Follow up?
What happens to your businesses if the marijuana industry is the only ones allowed to source these products?
So essentially, we would go out of business. A great majority of the products that we sell currently are, if we can't sell them, we have no business. We would, lay off all of our staff, and we wouldn't be able to operate. We wouldn't be able to pay our bills, and it'd be the end of everything that I've built, that thousands of other Ohioans have built. Wouldn't be good.
Follow up? No. Any other questions for the witness? Seeing none, we thank you for your time and your testimony.
Thank you.
Our next witness is James Higdon from Cornbread Hemp. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thomas, Vice Chair Matthew in absentia, Ranking Member Isaacson, and members of the committee. Thank you for having me. My name is Jim Higdon. I'm co-founder of Cornbread Hemp. We're a Kentucky-based manufacturer of hemp wellness products and hemp beverages. And as a small business, we serve thousands of direct-to-consumer customers in the Buckeye State, as well as over 30 retailers here as well. I'm here to support HB 198 and to express our gratitude to Representative Tex Fisher and Ty Matthews and their many co-sponsors who see hemp product regulation as the correct path for Ohio instead of prohibition or confining hemp products to cannabis dispensaries, which we believe would not be considered legal under federal law. We applaud Ohio's efforts to keep hemp products safe and accessible for all adult consumers. This bill is good, and I hesitate to nitpick it. However, HB 198 could be made better with one particular amendment that we would like to address, which is to allow direct-to-consumer sales for hemp beverages in order to increase the tax base for these products. Across the nation, we are in the midst of an effort by multiple competitive industries that seek to take over the hemp industry through state-level legislation. And a key part of that strategy appears to be targeting direct-to-consumer sales. However, we have succeeded by educating legislators on the importance of direct-to-consumer sales for our customers in other states. For instance, in Kentucky, we faced the prospect of a full prohibition of hemp beverages backed by very powerful interests. But by educating lawmakers, we preserve the right to sell hemp beverages direct to consumer despite opposition. Indiana also appeared to be poised to pass a similar bill that preserved direct to consumer sales, although that bill seems to have died in conference committee at sine die. Additionally, it is my understanding that Ohio allows direct to consumer sales for wine from out-of-state wineries with certain reasonable restrictions. Now, we respectfully request that direct-to-consumer sales for hemp beverages be allowed with the same restrictions as wine sales to make HB 198 an even better bill. Cornbread Hemp and other responsible hemp beverage manufacturers follow strict age gating standards to ensure we ship direct-to-consumer orders only to adults over 21. Please make a good bill better by allowing direct-to-consumer hemp beverage sales. We support HB 198. And we will encourage our thousands of Ohio customers to support this bill through every step of the process. Thank you for having me this afternoon, and I welcome any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Seeing none, we thank you for your testimony.
Thank you for having me.
Please have a look on your iPads as there are 6 additional written-only testimonies to be for your consideration. And this will conclude the second hearing for House Bill 198. Seeing no further business before the committee stands adjourned.